Hey, thank you for the question. In John 8:58, Jesus says, before Abraham, ego eimi, which means I am, but it is a coded reference to the divine name. It is the way the Septuagint, the ancient Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible, rendered two different ways that God self-identified in the Hebrew Bible. One is from Exodus 3:14, where Moses asks God their name, and God says, Ehyeh asher ehyeh, which is literally, I will be what I will be. But when that is translated into the Greek, it becomes ego eimi hoon. I am the one who is being, or who is continuously. So ego eimi, the first part of that, is also used to translate the Hebrew phrase ani hu, I am he, which is used in like Deuteronomy and Deutero-Isaiah to identify God as the one who does all of these things. Now, Jesus is not saying, I am God. It is not that explicit. It is a cryptic, coded reference to some kind of relationship between Jesus and the Tetragrammaton, the divine name. Now, we can look in Greco-Roman period Jewish literature for other ways that possession of the divine name, endowment of the divine name, facilitates the assertion of God's roles, God's prerogatives, God's power, and in some cases, even identification as God, while not being God. So we have the Son of Man, we have Yahoel, we have Metatron, we have other figures from 2 centuries before Jesus all the way to 2 and 3 centuries after Jesus, where possession of the divine name allows someone to assert God's power, God's prerogatives, and in some cases allows them to even identify as Adonai, as the God of Israel, without actually being the God of Israel. And this goes all the way back to the Hebrew Bible with the angel of the Lord, the Malach Adonai, whose identity overlaps with the identity of God themselves in several stories. So for instance, in Exodus 3:2, the text states that the angel of the Lord appeared to Moses. But in verse 6, that angel says, I am the God of your father Abraham. And so that is a far more explicit identification as God than anything we see in Greco-Roman period Judaism or in the New Testament. But the angel is also not God. How does that work? Well, we have Exodus 23 verses 20 to 21, rationalizing how the angel can be distinct from God but can identify as God. In that passage, God says, I'm sending an angel before you to guard you on the way. Don't disobey him. Don't tick him off, because he will not forgive your sins, because my name is in him. And what this is saying is the angel has been endowed with the divine name and therefore exercises divine prerogatives. And oh, by the way, this is how the angel can say, I am the God of your father. Now that statement, he will not forgive your sins, is the exact same statement that we find in the book of Joshua, where it describes Adonai as a jealous God and says in the exact same words in Hebrew, he will not forgive your sins. So this is no accident in Exodus 21. This is explicitly citing that identification of God as a jealous God and saying, look, this angel, by virtue of having God's name in him, can do what God can do. And this is the tradition that develops within Greco-Roman period Judaism into these ideas of name-bearing angels and of exalted humans and of others who can do what God does, who can sit in God's throne, who will receive worship, all in virtue of being endowed with the divine name. And I wrote an entire book on how this is all a reflection of the logic of divine images, Adonai's divine images, a cognitive approach. That is an open access book that you can access digitally for free through a link on my Linktree. But there is a long history within Judaism of individuals identifying with God and asserting God's power, God's prerogatives, and yes, even in some cases, identification with God via the endowment, the indwelling of God's names.